broadcast button on the GoToWebinar control panel to allow all attendees to hear you. This system will notify you once you begin your broadcast. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, for those of you who've joined in early, the session is about to begin in a few minutes. You can make yourself comfortable and get all set for the session. Yes, today is going to be the third day in the 5-day workshop series. All right. Before we get into today's session, what I'll do is I'm going to ask you for a quick little favor, the usual favor. If you can hear my audio loud and clear, and if you can see my screen clearly as well, you can make use of the chat to let me know the same. A quick audio and video check. If you can hear my audio loud and clear, and if you can see my screen clearly as well, we can go on and proceed with the session. We'll be starting off in a few minutes. A quick audio and video check. If you can hear my audio loud and clearly, and if you can see my screen as well, make use of the chat to communicate the same, and we will be starting off. Hi all, a very good afternoon. Thank you for having taken the time to join me in today's session. This is Jay, product expert from the AD Solutions team here at Manage Engine. So we are in the third day of the 5-day workshop series, and what are we going to discuss today? So through the first 2 days of the workshop, we've been discussing about certain things which are very important to Active Directory management. We started off by understanding user onboarding. Yesterday, we had gone ahead and also understood about user modification, and yes, definitely Office 365 related modification and Exchange mailbox management as well. So, in today's session, we will be talking about something very critical, which is Active Directory reporting. All right. So, what to expect out of today's session? So, what did we do yesterday? It was user modification. Today is about user reporting. So, the process that we are going to undertake today is more like an offshoot of what happened in the first 2 days. In today's session, we'll be discussing on certain reports. AD Manager comes pre-packaged with close to 200 plus reports, like you already know, for most of you who already been using the product. So today we'll be talking about certain security related reports. We'll be finding out as to how to grant or revoke permissions related to users and corresponding groups for which they have access. File server permission management is one another interesting topic that we'll be talking about, and definitely nested group membership, which seems to be a very big problem. We'll address that as well. And to go still further, there are more reports your way coming today. Let me quickly get to the product and walk you through all those important use cases and reports that could be helpful for any administrator out there. So pretty much the topics that we'll be covering today are about Active Directory reports through AD Manager Plus. I'll be going through as to all those critical reports one after the other. All right, great. So quickly jumping to my AD Manager Plus instance. So we've got the Active Directory reports module. So we've been discussing enough about the AD management module all this long. Yesterday, a quick recap for those of you who missed out yesterday and day before session. We were talking about user onboarding and user modification. When it came to user onboarding, we were discussing as to the importance of having user creation templates in place. The user creation templates pretty much helped us streamline the entire onboarding process because we had data pertaining to corresponding departments put or specified in those user creation templates, and user creation templates was done on the go, on the fly. Likewise, yesterday we were talking about modifying through the life cycle of a user. There's got to be modification that happens, things like group memberships being altered, things like permissions being modified, attributes being modified, and all that. So again, we had to create user modification templates for the same, and we applied them to different scenarios. People moving into departments, people moving away from departments, people requesting for specific access, using the modification templates for applying or making certain attributes mandatory, and a lot more interesting use cases. We also discussed about Office 365 management a bit in terms of the license and Exchange mailbox migration as well. So today we are moving to the next tab, which is AD reporting. So the first and foremost report for the day is going to be one of the most useful reports that every administrator wants to get hold of. And what is that? All right. So one common, problem with all organizations is the advent of inactive users creeping in. The biggest challenge with native Active Directory is it does not have an innate way to find out all those native users in one go unless you write a complex PowerShell script. So you'll have to write lines and lines of PowerShell script to get a basic report run and generated. And another problem is you can't have filters kept into those PowerShell scripts. So finding out inactive users is one problem, and acting on that right away is again going to be a challenge that has taken a toll on many administrators in terms of the quality of Active Directory management that happens. So to find out those inactive users in an organization, you can very well use one simple, straightforward report called as the inactive users report. All right, so the best advantage of the product is many a times all these reports are not very confusing. They're straightforward, direct to the point, and you'll be able to get hold of the corresponding data in just a few clicks. So that's the beauty of all these reports. So we've got the inactive users report right here. What I'll do is I'll quickly set a specific time period. Let's say users who've been inactive in the last 3 months. That is my time span. I've got the inactive users report, the last 90 days, and we are good to generate. So the best part again is it's easy to set up the product and it's instantaneous. So I just set the product up, it discovers my domains and starts probing into my domain to find out all those inactive users in one single go. All right. So here, in a while, I'll be able to get hold of all those users who've been inactive in my organization. If otherwise, if I were to do it through the native way, the whole process could have been not just very, very tedious, but also you never know the sanity of the data that's coming in. It could not be a comprehensive report. So here we are running it for the last 90 days for my required time span. All right. So let's see how it looks. So here I've got all these users who've been inactive, and I'm also able to take a look at the time when they got created or when they last logged on. So most of the users in my environment are test users, so the last log on time says 0. If in case you had your users joining or logging in, you'd be able to see that they were logged in at a specific point in time. So it doesn't stop right here. What do we actually want to do to these inactive users? You'd want to definitely perform a task on these inactive users. Many a times it turns out to be you'd want the inactive users to be disabled. Can that happen? Yes, you can select all of the users in one go, all right, or be very specific in the users who are selecting. In my instance, already the inactive users have been disabled. That's because I can select the users and in one click I can say disable users. All right, so that's the first step that any administrator would want to do. If a user is inactive, as a best practice, it's good to have them disabled just so that they don't cause any trouble at a later point in time. They don't come back as zombies and haunt us. Yes, all right, that is one possible outcome of this action. Or you could have them quarantined or move them to a specific container. What am I talking about right here? So when it comes to these inactive users, it's usually a cycle that they go through. So they get disabled, all right, and then you can actually move them to a OU that's dedicated to quarantine all those inactive users. So you can also set tracking for these OUs with your Active Directory auditing tools and check if anything malicious happens right there. So you can move all of them, and when you say okay, they're going to move to this specific quarantined OU in one single shot. Or you can also choose to perform any actions on top of these inactive users from the exhaustive list of actions that we've got. If they're disabled, you think that they've been wrongly disabled and the account has been the account could be used, you can very well say enable the disabled users if they've been disabled and inactive as well, and say go. So I'm just going to show you this specific action right here. It can be enable or disable based on your requirement. All right, I'm saying go. It'll take us to a window, a management window, from where I can directly perform an action. So this is the benefit that I'm talking about. So I need not go to my management tab directly, import a CSV file, but instead, like I was telling yesterday, all the reports in AD Manager Plus are actionable, so I can perform actions right on top of them. Since I already have all of them displayed or disabled, I'm going to go ahead and enable them for your understanding. All right. So just to show that the action takes place right away. Selecting all of them, checking all of them, all the 100 objects, saying OK to that prompt, and I'm going to enable all those 100 accounts. If it was the other way around, if I'd want to disable them, I can do the same operation from the same place. All I had to do was choose the right option and say OK. So yes, I am able to modify all those accounts one by one after the other. So what are we dealing right here? We're talking about an Active Directory management action happening from within a reporting module. So if I were to have done the same thing, if I were to have found out those inactive users and used the enable disable feature, I should have imported it as a CSV and then performed. Instead of doing that, I have a nifty report that would help me do the same. All right. So AD reports and inactive users report is what I'm talking about right now. So if you are the kind that necessarily doesn't like doing it manually, the AD automation module helps you do an dynamic cleanup. You can set the time of inactivity, all right, and then import this specific inactive users report automatically and perform a cleanup then and there. I'm getting into the automation module, giving you a quick sneak peek into the fifth session that we'll be talking about a cleanup. All right. So I'm getting into the automation policy to show you just this. All right. So the automation policies are nothing more than a series of logic that happens one after the other. So here the policy is deprovisioning policy. All right. So I'm getting into the policy, and it's an user automation that we're talking about. The same tasks that I was talking about, moving them to a specific OU, removing them from group, and after a said period of time, disabling them and deleting their mailbox, and finally deleting the users after 30 days. So now if you're wondering as to how these users are picked, how does the product pick as to who has to be performed or who has to be undergoing this operation, moving, the disablement and the deletion, all of that. All right, it's going to be pretty simple. From the automation module, I'd be able to see that I have a cleanup policy set or a cleanup task set. So here I have a specific task that says Active Directory cleanup. All right, when I get into the task, I'm able to see that it works based on the criteria of inactive users and it applies the deprovision policy that we just saw. So the reporting module does not work in silos. It works in close integration with the management module of the product and definitely, yes, the automation module of the product as well. So here, when I run the deprovisioning policy, that four-step deprovisioning policy and fetch users from the inactive users report directly, I'd be able to time it right. I have the inactive users report, which is a logon report. I can choose to exclude two set of users. One is the disabled users, which makes a lot of sense. I don't want the disabled users to be or deleted or disabled once more. So I already have them manually disabled. So I'm just focusing on the inactive users. Or if the users have never logged on, I can select that as well, and the list is going to be a lot more precise. Just those users who've been inactive after having logged in and used or and they're still not disabled, just those users are going to be a part of the automation right here. And when I say okay, and when I say update, the automation is going to run on a monthly basis and clear off all those inactive users. So that is the beauty of the product. So the AD reporting module does not work in silos, but then it works in integration close tandem with all the other modules. You can call for the benefit of that specific module across the product. All right, that's one useful feature. Let's take the next scenario. Okay, say for example, there are 5 administrators in your organization, 5 domain controllers, and 30 help desk technicians. In such instances, you definitely want to have complete control over who's got access to what critical machine. So how would you restrict or find out those users in a specific group, and find out the complement, or what am I trying to say right here? There's a specific group for which there's got to be access to a specific list of computers. You can map that way, but you do not want other users who are not a part of that specific group to have access to those computers. So how do you actually come up with such a case where you'd be able to exclude all those users of a specific use or of a specific group and apply a requirement or a condition. All right. So if that is your case, we've got again a users not in group report. It's a group report that we're talking about. All right. The users not in group report serves your purpose. So every time when you want to view the list of users who aren't a part of a specific group, exclude a specific important group and generate a report for all those users and then act upon those users. That is the idea. So now I want to find out all those users who are not administrators at any level. So I'm going to quickly do this. I can go on and add groups to this filter. So I'm saying administrators. All right, I'm going to look up for other groups as well. Of the 60 groups in my organization, I've got 6 groups that are admin related groups. So all these groups are selected. I'm saying okay, and when I hit generate, I'm going to get a list of users who are not or no way linked to these admin level groups, and then I can enforce restrictions on top of these users. All right. So now I'm getting the list generated. It's going to take some time. There are a lot of users in my organization. And what again is the idea? To make a list of all those users who are not a part of a specific group, just so that I can quickly apply my condition. All right, this is more like an exclusion principle that we are following right here. So I'm generating the report. Okay, I'm guessing it's almost done. A few more users, and yes, I'd be having all those users other than the admin level users. So ideally, my admin level users or administrators or those who are a part of the important security groups will have access to critical file servers, critical workstations, critical domain controllers, and all that. So I can select all these users in one shot and have them excluded of all those critical devices. So what's the benefit of this specific action? So during the course of business, every now and then administrators slip in one or two computer accesses or workstation accesses to those end users and forget to revoke them for business purposes. It should have been asked for, and then it should have been forgotten to be revoked. In such instances, you can't really afford to go one user after the other, find out which specific computer, and then revoke it. So we're doing a bulk sort of operation right here, making one report that has all those users who are not a part of a group, select all of those users, and then apply a condition that could stop or prevent access to specific workstations. All right, that's our case right here. So it's going on. I'm good with the 500 users for the demonstration right here. So there are 500 users in my organization who aren't a part of any of these groups. Okay. So again, like you can see, all those users are listed in one instance, and I have provision to act on all those users. So I'm selecting the users right here. I'm just going with the first 100 right here, and I'm going to go ahead and show you as to how I'm going to enforce this restriction. I want to enforce a logon restriction to all those critical machines. So logon permissions that were granted inappropriately prior are going to be removed in one single go. So I'm able to see that there are a lot of attributes that can be acted upon right away, but then in my case it's going to be user workstations that I'm considered about, and I'm saying okay. So with this specific action, I can very well exclude all these users from having access to critical machines. So here I'm saying remove computers for users. It can't get any simpler. So I have all those users who are non-administrators, which definitely guarantees me with the removal from all those critical domain controller level computers or critical file servers. All right. So I have these critical machines in my organization. I'm saying, okay, no access to this. And when I say apply, instantly, if any of those users had access to these critical machines in my organization, when I say apply, it's going to get removed. So that is the second use case. In case you have logon permissions granted inappropriately to any of your critical machines, you can run a report with all those users who aren't a part of a specific group and have the corresponding permissions revoked. All right. The next case is a very interesting case. Let's assume a scenario where you are attacked by a brute force attacker. All right. The entire organization has gone through a potential breach of password, or a security threat has come up in place. So it's many a times difficult to pinpoint as to where it originated or to find out whose password has been compromised. So organizations, as a best practice, do an organizational wide password reset. Or if you have a tool that reports that a specific OU is affected, or a specific group is affected, you can very well use the product to run a report for that specific requirement and do a password reset for just that group. All right, so let's take the all users report right here. There's been an attack in my organization. Passwords have been compromised. To minimize the impact of this brute force attack, I'd want to quickly act upon the situation and stop the damage from propagating. So I'm quickly generating the all users report. All right, so this will give me a list of all the users in my organization. So wait, I have a situation where I know which specific OU or geographical unit has been affected. In such instance, I can very well have a filter in place. So I'm selecting the aid OU. All right, so it's just my Melbourne office that's got affected by the brute force attack. So I'm selecting that specific OU alone and I'm saying okay. Okay. Now when I generate the report, I'm going to get a list of users, and all those users who are a part of the Melbourne OU in my organization, who just work out of the Melbourne office. So there's been the attack and I'm trying to stop or do a password reset for all those users in this just office. So here I'm generating a report. In this case, it's an all users report. My case is a brute force attack and I'd want to do a password reset for a list of users. So I'm selecting the entire list, all those employees in my Melbourne branch, and then I'm making a request for password reset. I can say hit reset password, say go, and it's going to take me to the password management console from where I can do a bulk password change for all those users. So I can say reset password and make sure that the password is generated automatically. I can configure the password complexity and communicate it to the all users whose passwords are being reset. That's one way to do it. Or I can manually set a very complex password, communicated across the organization, and have the password to be changed upon next logon set as yes. So that way every user will have to mandatorily change the password to something new. All right, so I'm doing an organization wide password reset for all the users. All right, I'm communicating it to them and then ensuring that they change their password upon next logon. Yes, if that is enabled, it's going to be all the more helpful. All right, and when I say apply, all of the users passwords by mandate is going to be changed upon next logon. So here you see the password is has to be changed upon next logon for all the users right here. So that way I can carry out an org wide password reset or for a specific OU. In this case it's just my Melbourne OU. All right, in other instances, when related to passwords, there might be cases where you have users whose password is set to never expire. That again is a very critical problem. Or the user's password attribute, when it's set to never expire, the chances of it getting hacked become all the more easy. So is there a specific report that gives me a quick peek into what is the status of the password. So I can quickly get into the AD reports, get into password reports, and look up for this specific attribute, which is password expiry right here. So this is the next use case that we will be talking about. All right. So the password never expires users for users attribute. If it's set yes, that is going to be a big problem, especially from a security point of view. If it's the admin accounts or administrative accounts for which the password is set to never expire, then the problem that we are handling is a lot more complex. So it's good to have this report scheduled. And like you already know, all reports in AD Manager Plus can be scheduled for your very own timeline, for your very own format, and you can have them inboxed. So that way, if any of those users creep into this specific report, or you have a report with values for this condition with password set as never expire, you can do a monthly check, or you can do a monthly audit and quickly get into that and act upon it right away. So here I'm able to see that there's an administrator account for which the password is set to never expire, which is not the right thing to do. You should definitely make sure that the admins move their password or change their password at a given time interval. Say, for example, as a best practice, probably at least once in a month. So that would ensure more security for the organization. So I can go to more actions and very simply say reset password. I can do it for all the users. I'm selecting all of them. Again, generating a report, doing a management action right away from the same console. All right. So this takes me again to the same password management dash from where my users alone are selected. All right, this time I don't want to reset their password. It's all right. But what I want to do is I want to say the user's password never expiry has to be set to no. I've done that. I've said that as set that as no. And when I hit apply for all of these users, the password is instantly attribute is going to change. All right. So I'm going to quickly do that for you and show. So I'm saying no, the password never expires is definitely a big no. It has to expire. And I'm applying. All right. So I've applied it on those users, and now the password for the users or that specific attribute is modified for those users. So the change has been successfully applied, and their password attribute is now set to expire, and it's been successfully modified. So just a quick confirmation. Let's see if the report now shows up any values. All right. I'm running the same report once more. We're talking about a password report right here to check if any of the users have their password set to never expire. So that is my case. Getting into my password report, right? I'm going to go ahead and quickly hit generate right here to get hold of the report. And what do we have right here? When I say generate, there is no data that matches the requirement or the filter. So this is how your environment has to be set. Since you have reports scheduled that can be delivered, you can always stay on top of the system and identify even before such a problem creeps in. So now that we've been talking about passwords, there's another interesting password report that I'd want you to know. This again is a password related report, and from a security point of view, this again can't be the case. You can't afford to have users who haven't changed their password in a while. So password unchanged users. So at times by manual error, the AD attribute for changing password is set to not change or never change. In such instance, when there are users belonging to this category, all right, I'm going to say quickly time span users who haven't changed their password in a specific time span, who haven't changed their password in the last 1 month, in the last 2 months. You can select your very own time span and you'd get an exhaustive list of all those users who haven't changed their password in a specific time span. All right. So here I've got the list of users and the last time when they changed their password, and I also have the password expiry date. So this gives me a heads up on who's got to change their password next. So those users who haven't changed their password for the last 86 days, that's definitely a problem that we're handling right there. And in fact, an administrator level account has featured into this report. That's something that I definitely not appreciate. So it's good, or a best practice, as a best practice you can enforce password policy in such a way that the passwords are changed once in a month at least. All right, so here if it's within a month, that's perfectly fine. Still we can work with that, but then above a month, like these two cases right here, you can't have the passwords set that way. Alright, so that way you can quickly select those users for who you'd want to change the password from that list. Alright, say for example, Ankit right here has his password to be changed. So Ankit hasn't changed his password in the last 97 days, let's assume. I can quickly say this button right here, click this button right here, and I could quickly make sure that the user alters his password upon next logon. So the password by mandate is or has to be changed upon next logon. So which is the exact requirement that we have. I have a report in place, I have an insight in place, and I'd want to act on that insight right away. All right, so that's what we'd want. So we just ran a report now for passwords. We saw how to generate a report for users who haven't changed their passwords in a while. We saw users for who the password attribute is set to never expire. Those are two important problems. And again, if you want to make sure that you stay on top of the system or stay ahead of the system, you can generate the soon to expire user passwords and notify those users that their password is about to be expired, and you can ask them to reset it quickly just so that they aren't locked out of their accounts. All right, so that's one another useful password related report. So, giving you a quick recap, we've been talking about few categories right now. We've been talking about inactive users report. We've been talking about reports for users who've been disabled. You can find out that. We also found out, or we also understood that you can act on reports then and there. We saw one interesting report where we found out members who were not a part of a specific group. We acted on those members or non-administrative level people, and then we saw how just in case if there's a brute force attack happening in the organization, you can quickly run a report for all the users in a specific OU and have that sorted off instantaneously. All right, so that's another interesting case. Now, the last report that we ran was for password related problems. If the user hasn't changed their password, especially administrators from a security standpoint haven't changed their passwords, or if their password is set to never expire, we can act on that right away. All right. So there are other important problems that organizations faces. There could be certain attributes in your organization that could be mandatory. All right, let's take the example of employee ID. So employee ID could be the base attribute that could serve as the reference for many other scripts to run. That could be one of the cases. But what if the employee ID attribute is either left as empty or if it's duplicated? That could cause a lot of problem. So empty could lead to failure and duplicates could lead to conflict. In such instances, you'd want to know who are those employees with the same employee ID, or who are those employees with their employee ID left empty. We've got those are just use cases that I'm talking about. You can have your very own use cases to find out users with a specific attribute value set as empty or specific attribute value duplicating. So these are direct straightforward reports. I'm going to go ahead with the empty attributes report. So here in my organization, I can say all those attributes that are left as empty right here. Okay. From the list, I can choose that attribute for which I'd want to find the users whose values are left empty. I'm going to move and for clarity's sake, just have the most important attributes. I'm taking off all of that and I'm just going to say employee ID. And I'm going to say OK. right? So what I'm doing is I'm tailor making my very own report for that specific attribute that I want. Here, if the employee ID attribute is left as empty, I'd want the user to be displayed just so that I can quickly act on that, have the employee ID configured or have the employee ID filled out for that specific user. So that is my requirement. So I've got users belonging to different departments right here, and they also have their employee ID left empty. Just for clarity's sake, you can always make sure that you alter or customize the display as per your requirement. So in this case, since it's a custom report that we are working with, you can make sure that you move that specific attribute that you're looking up for into the final result that you'd want. So the display name, SAM account name could stay, the title and the department could also stay. The employee ID has to definitely stay in the output of the report. All right. So here I'm able to see that the SAM account name for this specific SAM account name, we've got the employee ID attribute left as empty. And as a matter of fact, the title and department attributes are also left empty for all these users right here. So what do I have right here? I have a situation and I can quickly export this as a report. All right. I can export it with the CSV headers. Right, I'm going to quickly show you how do I act on such instances or how do I act on such problems. Okay, what I'd want to do is, now that I know that the attributes, those critical attributes are left empty, I'm generating a report. I'm saving that as a CSV file. I'm saying empty attribute. I'm saving that file. I'm opening that up, and I'm able to see that there are close to 40 users for who I'll have to do modifications. All right, so I'm getting to that specific file and going to act on that file right away. So I have the SAM account name, which is an unique identifier. Yesterday, when we were discussing about the user modification, we understood that it's the pivot attribute for modification SAM account name. So I can quickly go on, key in that specific ID that I have a problem with. I have the employee IDs to be the problem. I can quickly have the employee ID value filled out, right? So the LDAP header is already in place. So I'm just, for reference, I'm going out with a few IDs right here, right? Let's assume that these are actual employee IDs and I'm filling that out. So this is going to be the 40 users for who I'm going to have the employee IDs configured right away instantly. Saving that again as a CSV file. All right, so I'm saying new users with new employee ID. I'm saving that up as a CSV file. I just did that. Now I can get back into my product, remind you of what bulk modification can help us do, and modify all those users employee IDs, or update the all those users employees ID. So users new ID. So this is my CSV file. I'm able to see that there are multiple users right here. Let's take Paul Jacob as a reference. All right, let's quickly look up as to, we just know that Paul does not have an employee ID. We generated the report. I'm saying modify users. I'm going to bulk import a CSV file here. Say import, choose the file. In this case, it's going to be the users new ID. Say open. All right. and then say OK. So the CSV file is getting imported. So what do I have right here? So I have all those files instantly, or the CSV data instantly into my system. So I have all those users and their corresponding employee IDs listed as well right here. So I can select all of them. All right, if in case I want to alter anything, I can do that as well, and I have to say update in Active Directory. Here is the most important point. So when you're doing a bulk modification, having the pivot or the base attribute set right is important. So here the attribute to be modified is the employee ID, and the reference attribute is the SAM account name. I'm saying OK, and the modification has kickstarted. So I have a problem, which was employee ID being left empty. I quickly generated a report and I'm successfully updating them in no time. So I'm doing a bulk operation from the reports on the go. So the employee IDs for all these users are getting updated simultaneously. So that's one beautiful use case. This is just an example that I'm talking about. You can have your very own use case. You can generate reports, modify the report quickly as per your requirement, key in the new values, do a AD modification with a bulk operation, right? So this update has been successful. This is helpful at multiple levels. You have problems with a specific attribute. So there is a organizational wide change to a specific attribute. You can do that operation this way. So the next feature that we'll be talking about is another interesting report. This time it's going to be a security level report that we'll be talking about. It's the Ntfs folder report. So many a times in organizations, during the course of business, permissions are granted to specific folders that are critical and forgotten. So keeping a tab on who's got the permission to the specific folder again is a big problem. So given the sheer volume of the number of folders in the organization, it becomes really difficult. So in this case, I'd want to go ahead and probe into one of the folders that I have in my organization, which is a corporate data folder. So this definitely is a critical folder. You'd be able to understand from the name of it. So in my organization, I have a folder that has all those important corp data for files. It's got the payroll details, it's got all the financial statements, and a lot more. And I definitely not want inappropriate users. I not want users to have access to it unless I know that in prior, or unless they are important. So normal users or end users can't have access to this. I'm saying okay, and I've selected the file for which I'd want to probe in and check what are the permissions, and then I can also very well go and set the level. Is it the first level? Is it like I'd want to go till the last level or till the root in the subfolders and check? I can say all subfolders and quickly generate. All right. Before this report is generating in the background, I'll quickly show you what I'm talking about right now. I'm getting into my system. I'm looking up for my corporate data. Oops, just give me 1 minute. All right, I'm going to look up for that corporate data folder. Did I just lock myself out? I guess I did. So when I had changed the password, I just locked myself out. No worries, this report still is going to be functional. The report is getting generated. Yes, there you go. So here, what do we have? I have a critical folder that says corporate data, and I'm able to quickly generate a list of all those users who have access to that report. So here, corporate data is our intentional folder. I'm able to see that the accountants have access to it, which is perfectly all right. Administrators have access to it. All right, so HR managers have access to it, but then there are normal users who also have access to this. How did this happen? So this is something that's very critical. I can't afford to have normal users like Albert or Adam right here having access to such critical corporate data. In such instances, what I'd want to do is I'd want to make sure that I get hold of this report at a given frequency or a set time interval, keep a continuous tab on who's getting access to the corporate data folder, and act on that right away. So if I want to do a modification, I can get to AD management, all right, and I can do Ntfs management on that specific report I generated. So it's a security management that we're talking about, and we're talking about the permissions right here. All right, so file server permissions is what I'm talking about. So I'm talking about altering or modifying the share permissions to a specific folder. All right, so modify share permissions is what I'd want to do. So when I get into this, I'm able to see that there are options to modify the share permission for a specific folder, which is very obvious. In this case, it's the corporate data folder on which I'd want to work. So I have the corporate data folder selected, and then I can go on and set the share permissions from here. So only specific accounts are supposed to have access. I'm saying that the corporate data folder should be just made accessible to this group. I can do it for a group level. All right, I'm saying finance, looking up for finance. So it's critical financial data, and only finance executive and accountants can have access to this. All right, so I'm selecting the permission to be full control. I can do that, and I am allowing that. All right, I'm going one step further and also denying permissions for other users. I can do that, or if I know a specific user has additional permission, I can directly select that user and deny them permission. So Adam was having permission to that critical folder. So I'm selecting Adam and I'm saying deny permissions for any control to this specific folder. Or as a best practice, I'd advise you to say remove all existing permissions and apply only the above permissions. So that way you'd know that this specific folder is accessible only by the accountant team. Yes, and they have full control or granular control as just like the way you set it. All right. And you can quickly modify the share permissions right away. Likewise, Ntfs permissions can also be modified. I'll show you how that happens. Under AD management, we've got the Ntfs permissions. So modifying the Ntfs permissions, right? For the same folder, let's consider the same example. So here I can go on and select that specific folder, which is the corp data folder. Selecting the corp data folder, saying OK. The next obvious step is to view the existing permission. The report runs inside this specific console itself. So here we're able to see that there are other users for who I do not want permission. So Albert or Adam necessarily doesn't need permission. So I'm selecting those users right away. I can do that. I can specify those users like in the previous instance, or again just specify those accounts that are supposed to have access and say okay. So at an NTFS level, I'm going to go ahead, go to the groups, select specific groups and get done with my permission management. So I'm saying finance data, so it's definitely the finance department. Just them. I'm saying okay to that corporate data folder. I'm saying remove all existing permissions and just apply the above. So all those inherited permissions are also going to go away. I'm not going to include the inheritable permissions for this object. No, I don't want that. I can also replace all inheritable permissions on descendants. I can do that as well. So for this, I'm just going ahead with removing all existing permissions. All right. So the permission level that I'm going to say is the accountants can have full control over the data. If I'd want to go granular, I can definitely go granular and select those levels of permissions that I'd want to grant. Okay. And I can say modify to the corporate data folder. So what do we have right here? So we have reports for various categories for different problems, to be precise. So here the corporate data folder is now altered and permissions are altered. So I can always go to the reports and quickly run the reports to check what is the update. So we had a problem, we ran a report. In fact, for that matter, I advise you to schedule as many reports as you want, all right? So I'm getting back to the report. I'm generating the report for the same scenario, and this time, now that I've altered or acted upon that scenario, I'm guessing things should have all changed right now. Right? I'm going to quickly generate the report once again to check if it's been updated. So there you go. We're able to see that the report shows me the new data. It's just the finance team that has access to the critical corporate data. So that way you can have a tight watch on your Active Directory, your files, your servers, your folders, and yes, you'd be able to take a look at the user objects and their statuses as well. All right. So we've pretty much covered the most important reports in AD Manager Plus. We've discussed close to 10 use cases. There are a lot more interesting reports that you can definitely work around with or play around with. And what I'd want you to do is I'd want you to write to me just in case if you have any queries. So we've got Office 365 reports that are very useful. Yesterday we were talking about this. So you can have an inactive users report run quickly and remove the licenses for those inactive users, saving precious Office 365 licenses. Or you can also find out the unlicensed users in your organization and have licenses applied in one go. You can have group reports run for Office 365. Likewise, there are multiple cases that are going to help you, and custom reports are definitely the most useful feature that we've added. So here there are a few custom reports that we've pre-created for you just so that you can get a heads up or a head start. So if you'd want to find out active users in your organization at this point in time, so I can quickly get into the active users report and it'll give me all those users who've been active in the last 30 days. So that is my filter that I'm setting right here, and I can have my custom report run in such a way. Right, so that's one useful custom report that you'd want. So custom reports are basically more like an extension to all those reports we support at this point in time, and we also at the same time let you tweak the filters that can be applied on top of the custom reports. So here I can go on and very well say the entire organization, or have a specific OU configured and hit generate and perform tasks on top of the report, or I can go on and modify an existing report if need be. So what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to modify an existing custom report that's pre-packaged. I can also create my very own custom report, a new one as a matter of fact. So the report editor module is opening up. So this is how the custom report editor would look like. So I have the conditions set as last logon in the last 30 days, and at the same time the account status has to be enabled. So if both of these conditions are matched, then it obviously means that the user has been active for the last 30 days or has been active in the last 30 days. Likewise, you can have multiple objects selected, different classes set. You can have attributes selected from the list that's right here. You can say if one attribute is this, if the primary group is this, if the user is a member of this group, and then the if I just want to find out all those users who are active in a specific group, if that's my requirement. All right, I'm just going to quickly go on and select the group attribute right here and say the users belonging to the sales department who've been active for the last few days. So if there is a user who's been out of office for like a specific span of time, say for example the road warriors, and they obviously their account must have been disabled and they were not active, so I can quickly look up for those users. All right, and quickly look up for sales. I can say okay right there and run the report right now. So I can have unlimited number of conditions added to the whole list, just in case if I have my very own LDAP query. I have an LDAP query that I found online. All right, if that's my case and I'd want to generate a report for that query, I can very well have my LDAP query keyed in. All right, I can view the LDAP query for this report as well. So this is how the LDAP query looks for the report that I just custom built. So the permutations and combinations for this report is innumerable. We've got custom reports that can be done in user reports, group categories, computer and contact reports as well. And you can very well have your own category built. All right. So we'd advise you to go through the custom reports module, try your way through the custom reports module, and let me know if you have any challenges building a custom report or you want any specific case to be incorporated. I'm going to give you one quick glance on what custom reports can do for you. So here we've got certain important reports that would help you, like security groups that were recently created, or you can also customize this to show members who were added recently to a security group, or in terms of computer reports, those that were decommissioned recently, those that went stale. In terms of contacts, you can see those contacts that are managed, that are unmanaged. Say for example, let's take another case. If you'd want a custom report for finding out employees reporting to a specific manager, all right, you can very quickly create your very own custom report, select the manager attribute or select the all users report, mark the manager and generate a report. So the idea is to give you the access or the fullest potential of all reports in AD Manager Plus, and we'd want you to customize it as per your requirement and use it. Why to restrict? So the offering is ours and the reports are yours. So that is pretty much the idea. Right, so we've gone through all those important reports that we've been discussing. We've been speaking about the logon permissions to those critical machines. We generated a group report and got rid of all those users who are not supposed to have access. We reset passwords for users in bulk using a report. We also went on to find out those attributes that were missing or empty attributes, and we also went to modify them then and there. We found out what were the permissions on a critical folder and found out how to modify them. Yes, we also know how to restrict users from having access to critical corporate data and work on it right away. So today's session was on Active Directory reporting. We went through multiple cases. The product is pretty large. We have 200 plus out of the box reports, and now additionally we've got the custom reports as well. So I've just touched upon all those important reports and I've given you an overview. You could go and get your hands onto those reports and tell me if you have any challenges. All right, so next week we'd be discussing about very important tasks when it comes to the administration in Active Directory. We'll be talking about AD delegation and workflow, and we'll also be talking about automation of all those critical AD tasks. I gave you an overview of a cleanup automation today. The last day is going to be the most important session where we will be talking about a full-fledged automation in Active Directory. All right. Thank you once again for being such a wonderful audience. You have any queries right now? I'm available at the chat to take your questions. And this is my email ID, jay@manageengine.com. If you want any queries, you can drop me a mail. I can have them answered to you. Thank you so much for being such a wonderful audience. You all have a great rest of the day. Just in case you want a copy of the presentation, you can just drop me a message right now and I can have the video sent over to you. You have a specific recommendation or a specific feature to be discussed, also feel free to mention that in the form that's coming up, and I'd have that topic covered for you.